Real to real, the jump off, the all in politics on an all in platform. I'm your host this evening, Walt the Damager.
And I'm Rob the Jetta. What's going on, family?
How you doing, family? Yeah, we got very exciting guests here tonight with some very important information. Would you please usher them in, my brother?
Absolutely. You know, the Tulsa Race Massacre, also called the Greenwood Massacre, took place on May the 31st and June 1st of 1921, when mobs of white residents, many of them deputized and given weapons by city officials, attacked Black residents and businesses of the Greenwood District in Tulsa, Oklahoma. It has been called the single worst incident of racial violence in American history. The attacks carried out on the ground as well as from the air with private aircrafts destroyed more than 35 square blocks of the district. At that time, the wealthiest Black community in the United States, known as Black Wall Street. Joining us on All In Politics are Nasir Alston, along with his father, whom I've known for 33 years through the bond of Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity Incorporated, Mr. Hershey Alston, to talk about their latest project called District Greenwood, the Amalgamated People. Welcome, fellas.
Thank you. We both thank you. We thank you for having us.
Absolutely. I've been a big fan of Nasir, your work. Of course, I've known hers for 33 years, as I mentioned, but I've been a big fan of your work over the last couple of years with some of the projects that you did. And I just want, just to establish with the listening audience and the viewing audience, some of your work that you've done in the past. I know you did some work with sickle cell and some other positive work through the arts of film. So tell us a little bit about some of your projects that you've done and your little bit of your background.
Okay. So we produced 4 or 5 films in the past 5 years. The first film that we did produce together was about sickle cell anemia, and that was a more personal story because I do live with sickle cell anemia, and I directed that when I was 16, going on 17 at the time, and won a few awards, local, and also got into a film festival, and if I'm not mistaken, Uganda. So yeah, that was one of the first films that got me into the film world, and then after that we did a few other documentaries, one called Men of Understanding, and then shortly after that, 2019, we did a project in collaboration with the YMCA about youth gun violence in the city of Philadelphia.
And also, we can't forget about Vigilante Chronicles that we actually won Best Film for. And that film actually was submitted into and accepted into 3 different film festivals.
Wow. It's interesting, as I saw this is a project with the Black Wall Street project that you're doing right now. I'll
Right.
be quite honest with you, Hurston, you and I came through, the similar times in the school districts. I don't recall ever learning about the Black Wall Street and what happened there and the wealth of our people. So let's talk a little bit about this project, because we've, through YouTube and public television, we are starting to see more documentaries made on this. What differentiates this project that you guys are working on as opposed to some of the other pieces that we can YouTube on Black Wall Street?
Well, absolutely. Initially, Nazir was going to actually direct this project. I've always been a history buff, so I kind of said, you know what, I want to take this film take this bull by the horns, and I want to do this film myself. I felt like, I've watched many different documentaries, and mostly all the documentaries that I actually have watched really focus on what happened. My documentary is going to focus on why it happened, uh, based on the racism that existed, why they were so successful, why they were able to keep their dollar in the Black community, sometimes from 1 to 5 years. That's very important. I think it's very important for our youth to actually see how important it is to own and control our Black dollars. We're not seeing a lot of that. We are the #1 consumers in the world right now. So we have to get back to actually, developing and owning our own businesses. So I want to focus on why, they were so successful as opposed to what actually happened. because many of us know, on the evening of the bombing, even after the bombing, not one person was ever prosecuted for the actual bombing incident. So
Well, that's so interesting. When you're still looking at justice, and racial injustice things. It seems like it's been a pattern of things, and a lot of folks, they kind of skip over, slavery and go straight to the civil rights movement, and totally ignore, and not any fault of their own, just was not taught about an era that was in between that was extremely important and needs to be talked about. Doing your research for this film, what are some of the things that you discovered, and what are some of the things that we need to know today?
well, there were many things I actually discovered. During the 1889 land run, O.W. Gurley, he was one of the prominent founders of the town. He purchased 40 acres on the north side of Tulsa, and he pretty much wanted to make this land primarily for Black people. So what he actually did, he wanted to invite prominent doctors, lawyers, and teachers to come to this town and kind of rebuild the town. But prior to that, this land was actually set aside for the Native Americans. I don't know if you ever heard of the Trail of Tears. So basically, the Native Americans were actually there first before the actual oil boom actually was kind of made successful and made Oklahoma successful and kind of put them on the map. So you kind of had the 5 civilized Indian tribes. Some of them were the Seminole, the Chickasaw, the Cherokee, and they actually, had to do the Trail of Tears. They actually had to walk from their respective areas to Oklahoma. So then you had the 1889 land run, and actually O.W. Gurley, he actually was into politics at one point. So he actually resigned from his appointment from Grover Cleveland, and he purchased the 40 acres in the land. So when he first got there, he purchased a 2-story building on the north side of the tracks. I don't know if you ever heard of, like, when you want to find where Black people live at, go to the railroad tracks. So he purchased his first 2-story building on the north side of Tulsa. So he realized once he started inviting people to come to Tulsa and people was coming there on the railroad, he felt like, look, I need to start a general store because when they get here, they're going to need toilet paper, toothpaste, so on and so forth. And that was one of his first business projects, was really kind of catapult him into purchasing other, real estate in the on the north side of Tulsa area.
That's interesting. This is our first All In Politics broadcast, and this is the first time we're broadcasting live. So I want to tell our viewers to like and share. This is some real important information, and we want to make sure that we get this out to the public. This is a public service, from the All In Network. Again, this is the first night that we've done this, and we think that this is an important project, and that's why we're going live. Well, you and I have discussed in the show prep, bringing, how can, we saw these successful Black men and women, really, creating some economic success during racial segregation times in Jim Crow. I know you had some questions and some comments, about bringing that to today, and how can we, replicate that success.
Yes, and I believe me and Hershey had a conversation as well. Just to backspin and piggyback off the O.W. Gurley, there was also his counterpart, who was J.B. Stedford.
J.B. Stratford, actually, yes.
Stratford, exactly. Thanks for a correction. And they had a vision that if they can pull the resources of these townsfolk and individuals, how much of a economical impact they can make. So we're thinking that 10,000, I believe, if that's the correct number, 10,000 on a microcosmic proportion. Imagine on a macro, it was 10 million. If 10 million African Americans had that same sight and vision as to where we will be at today.
Well, we'll be much further than where we are. You have to think about during that period of time, like I said, the Black dollar stayed in the community for sometimes up to 5 years. Can you imagine? Like today's time, the Asians, they keep their dollar in the community up to like 27 days. Caucasians, about 22 days. We as African Americans, our dollar leaves our community 6 hours after we make it. And that's sad. Like I said, we're like the number one consumer. So as soon as we make our money, it leaves our community. We get upset sometimes when we see these, Dominican stores that are popping up in our communities, and we get upset. You see how they've been there for 1 or 2 years. Now you see them riding around in new cars and everything, and you're wondering why. Because at the end of the night, that corner goes bankrupt because that particular Dominican store that's in your community, they don't put $1 back into your community. So that's why they're able to actually make the moves that they're making because we're supporting them. So we need to get back to owning and controlling our own black dollar so we can create generational wealth for for those that may come after us, because true wealth is something that you own, you control it, and you can leave for those after you.
Right. And Nazir, you being the younger demographic proportion of society, as a younger guy, where do you feel as though some of the aim and the focus should be on for young Americans to take place in this?
I feel like the focus for my generation should be ownership. Like he said, you need to have something that you can own, control, and pass down. And I feel like there's no barrier of entry when it comes to ownership. You could own anything at any age, honestly. There's kids out here that had ownership of other people's companies doing stock at like 12 years old. Or you could start your own company doing whatever you want, and you can legitimize it too. Even if you're under the age of 18, all you need to do is have your parents' permission to give them like 2% of your company, and now you're legitimized, and now you're in the ebb and flow of the system. So I feel like there just needs to be more education for the youth, because it starts when you're young. The mindset, the mind shift starts when you're young. Then also we're moving in a direction where our country is going to be highly based off of like technology and uh in those fields. And if you are young and you are creative, and so many people are already in technology at such a young age, if you have the knowledge and skill set to start your own type of tech company and build it over time, within 10 years, 2030, you could have a multi-million dollar company if you think think ahead. It's all about thinking ahead at the end of the day. And I feel like our youth have the ability to do that, but a lot of them weren't around the right circles and didn't have the households or the community behind them to support them and further them in that right direction, because things don't move the same as they did 40 years ago. Um, Things changed, and the youth definitely is going to take over. We're the next generation who are going to be our next politicians and senators. We are the next generation, because everybody else is, dying off. This 60-year-old white man. So
I just want to piggyback on what Najir said, starting your own business. And I felt like at the age of, what, 15, 16,
yeah,
15,
16.
16 years old, when we first, and did our first film, I said, when we do this film, we want to do it correctly. So basically, he was incorporated at the age of 16 years old. And like he said, he did give me, the bare minimum is 2% of the company, but he gave me a little bit more than that of the company. And like I said, since then, not only have we done films, but we've also done a lot of other music videos. We've done promotional videos for small businesses. So, film's not the only thing we do as a multimedia film and media production company, but it's very important to, I encourage him to, like, look, this is what you want to do. We're going to make a business out of it. Like, I encourage anyone that's young, if they have a vision, if they have an idea, say if a young girl likes to bake cookies, yeah, encourage her to bake her cookies, put a price tag on it and sell it.
Right.
Start a business.
It's interesting too, going through some of your media information that you provided to us before the show. You had a lot of folks involved in this project. Let's talk about
Absolutely.
some of the support that
It's
you
growing
received.
too.
It's growing. I mean, it's growing. I just got word today, as I mentioned to you, Rob, day before yesterday. I have Ramondo Frank, who's one of our fraternity brothers, who's actually one of the producers on the project. He texted me earlier today that Mark Lamont Hill is on board for the interview. So I really needed him, to give a different perspective, because one of the things that, like you asked me earlier in the interview, one of the things that kind of upset me, because when I was doing my research, it was like a day-to-day type of thing. Some days I would leave the library in a good mood. Some days I would leave really frustrated. Some days I would leave angry. And one of the things that really angered me while I was doing my research was to find out that, it was close to like $4.7 million loss in assets collectively, and not one insurance claim was paid out. Right? No one received any direct reparations for actually what happened. And also, just to think about this, there is no statute of limitation on murder, but not one person was ever prosecuted for the bombing. Or there was some articles that I actually read where they were actually decapitating black people on site. And some of us were just so consumed and just by the bombing, they were just falling to their knees and just submitting themselves to be decapitated. So these are, little known United States facts that people don't want to talk about it. It's like it's a situation where, not everything that you face is going to change, but if you don't face it, nothing is going to change. So that was one of the main reasons why I wanted to do this project, because I wanted to bring this to the surface. And what happened, it was a project where I felt like it had to come to me. And it was a brother who was a noble. Actually, I was at Lincoln University at their homecoming, and he said to me, "Yo, Hirsch, what's up with the Black Wall Street Project?" And when he got in my ear, that kind of motivated me to actually, I need to really get on this. And then once we dropped the trailer several weeks ago, I started getting DMs where little kids was thanking me for sharing information that was never given to them in the schools. So that kind of, has really been motivating me to get this film out there and really, tell a story, an untold story, some of the things that actually happened. But my focus is to focus on the economic piece to show how important it is for us to get back to owning and controlling our Black dollars, and also to become financial literate. That's a big part of it, so we can continue to move forward as a people, being able to own and control our Black dollars.
Yeah, and just to add on to that, the financial literacy is one of the more important parts, because we can teach our kids how to make money and get money, but we don't teach them how to control money and manage money, and how money works. A lot of people my age, they say, "Oh, I want to get money, I want to secure the bag," but how do you want to secure the bag? How do you want to make money if you don't know how money works?
Right.
So that's what this film is going to like teach, and what it's
Yeah.
going to give up.
And that's one of the, I just got it, I got a semi confirmation today because there's an area in Greenwood today where they have one of the largest Black female CPA accounting firms that's in Tulsa, and actually in the same exact area where the bombing actually took place. So I
Wow.
actually have a contact. I'm waiting on a phone call, and I really think they want to be a part of this project because, interviewing CPAs is like accounting is the science of money.
Right.
So, just to have someone on film to talk about that and to talk about why they came back to the same exact place that once existed, and how important how important it was for them to come back to the same exact area, because like anything else, in order to be a good man, you must see a good man. So in order for our youth to actually see, productive businesses doing the right thing, they actually have to see it. So that's why I'm trying to get a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of people that I interview are actually millionaires that are actually in the interview. So I wanted to give them the opportunity so people can actually see that still out here doing our thing out here, but we don't get the chance to see them on a daily basis. So
Right. When you talk about millionaires, the first thing we think about is our professional athletes, our
no, these are just
you know, that's right.
regular people that got out there, came up with an idea and just ran with it. One of the sisters that I interviewed, her name is Michelle. She teaches coding all up and down the East Coast. She's a multimillionaire.
Wow.
It's one thing when you take a kid fishing that fish that that fish for a day, but when you teach them how to fish, they learn how to fish for a lifetime. So I think that's very important. That's why she's so successful in doing what she's doing.
I think you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought I heard you mention that, of course, no charges were brought up, or no one was convicted.
Right.
But I also heard that you said not one insurance claim was
Now,
paid.
one insurance claim
Life,
was
life
actually paid
insurance?
out to this day. Um, Hopefully I can get our brother Michael Corden on to kind of discuss the legal aspect of that, because my whole thing is like, if not one insurance claim was paid out, what about the descendants of the families that suffered from this? Because if you think about it, if they received some form of reparation for what actually happened, can you imagine how their lives would be changed today?
Hmm.
I think that something, that should be addressed. What's the point of paying insurance and then something like that happens and not one insurance claim is paid out? That really kind of angered me too when I found that out. So that's one of the things. Like, what about the descendants? Can they cash
Right.
in on that?
Right.
Because they may say, well, the insurance company don't exist. Well, they may have changed the name throughout the years, but if you follow the money, they're still around.
That's right.
Now, that's another thing, not to cut you off, Rob. That's another thing that can probably be looked into as there is no statute of limitations on murder. What about statute of limitation on claims?
Absolutely, especially in an incident like that, when you use vintage World War II planes and insidious bombs and nitroglycerin bombs to bomb 35 World War One, I'm excuse me, World War One vintage planes to actually drop, nitroglycerin bombs on 35 blocks. Just to give you an example of 35 blocks, if you go between the Delaware River to the Schuylkill River, that's roughly only about 30 blocks. So can you imagine that area going north, south, east, and west, 35 blocks, burned down in one night?
Decimated.
Just picture that in your head. In one night, 35 blocks.
It's amazing. You know, and here's a question that I have, and I often thought about it, and perhaps you guys may have run across this while you were doing your research. But as you know, there's two sides of every story.
Absolutely.
In doing your research, I mean, have you come up with any records or any type of documentation to get an understanding from the white perspective and why they felt, particularly, we see city officials provided the ammo and things like that? You know, was there any type of documentation to show why, these cities?
Well, I'll tell you exactly why. What happened, blacks weren't, this is a time period where segregation actually worked for us. Because during that time period, when the oil boom came through, so most of the blacks worked on the south side or the downtown area of Tulsa. And what they actually did, they had to eat it where you couldn't shop downtown. So what they did, they worked for these rich oil moguls on the south side. They took their money to the north side and invested in their own community. So what happened over a period of time, they started seeing our people, rising up, and they start seeing us, building mansions on an area which is called Standpipe Hill. And that was the area where, on the evening of the bombing, they actually backed up pickup trucks and they was going into these mansions, stealing grand pianos, fur coats, jewelry. Before they actually burned them down, they went and looted them first. So it was all about jealousy because they felt like, when they came home from World War One, a lot of these World War One white veterans, and they seen this thriving black community on the north side of Tulsa, making moves, they were very upset. They were very jealous. That's what it all boiled down to. They were very jealous. They came up with a bogus story, which was a situation where there was a young black man who was called Dick Rowland. He was a boot black, which was a shoe shiner guy. And Sarah Page, she was a white girl. She came from Kansas City. And she was a teenage, young girl, white trash kind of sort of, based on what I read. And actually what happened on this particular day of May 30th, there was a place downtown Tulsa, Oklahoma on the south side called the Drexel Building. And this is one of the only places where if you worked on the south side of Tulsa, Oklahoma, any one of the stores or work for anyone, they had an agreement where you can use the restroom in the Drexel Building. So on this particular day, Dick Rowland went to actually go to the Drexel Building and use the restroom, and he was running to catch the elevator and he tripped. So apparently he tripped and he stepped on Sarah Page's toe. So when they get to the next floor, she yelled rape. And after that, and hence this was like, you had the Tulsa Tribune, who was one of the biggest instigators of the whole incident, and put in the paper, say, look, white girl yells rape, there's going to be a lynching tonight. So what happened when the blacks of Tulsa found out about this, and they knew that this was not the case, they actually rallied around Dick Rowland. And actually, everyone that actually lived, all 15,000 people who lived in Tulsa, went down to the courthouse to actually protect him, because they knew this was bogus. I'm talking about rich, poor, illiterate, literate. They all went to protect Dick Rowland. And, it was one gentleman who came home from World War One. And he went down, and him and about 25 other black people, they went down to the courthouse. And this white guy asked the black man, say, look, what do you plan on doing with this pistol? And the black man told the white dude, said, look, I'm going to use it if I have to.
Wow.
And he actually shot the white dude. So actually, that's what actually incited the riot. That's what really got, that was the fuel that really, kicked it off. Dick Rowland played a big part, but the shooting of the white man, that's what really kicked it off. And from there, it was just like on and popping.
Talk about the impact of the Greenwood community today.
Well, they're actually trying to get back. I don't know if you saw an article. They just removed the Black Lives Matter thing that they had in the middle of the street, which I think that, this will give you a little history about Greenwood. Greenwood was like the business district or the quote unquote Black Wall Street district, which is very prominent. A lot of people don't know that the Gap Band, and many of us,
Yeah.
we love their music. Well, the Gap Band stands for Greenwood, Archer, and Pine. That was the intersection. The song "You Dropped the Bomb on Me," pretty much that was about the bombing of Tulsa. A lot of people don't know that. So, Greenwood would be like our 52nd Street in Philadelphia back in the
Right.
day.
Oh, yes. Yes.
Everybody went there to shop. That's where all the movers and shakers. That's where it went down. So to see that a community is trying to come back and rebuild, for example, like the accounting firm that I mentioned to you earlier, they're trying to come back to the same exact area and rebuild is one thing. But the funny thing, I'd read a lot of articles. There were people that actually grew up in Tulsa in that same exact area and never knew anything about the actual incident. It was never taught in the schools.
Right.
Yeah, that's similar to like the Philadelphia bombing. I didn't find out about
Yeah,
that.
it was never taught in the school. So now they made it mandatory that it's going to be in the text moving forward. But can you imagine you living on the north side of Tulsa and maybe 100 years prior to you, there was a major incident that many lives were lost and you knew nothing about it. That's one of the main reasons why I'm holding this film. Right now we're about to approach post-production, but I'm holding this film to May of next year because that'll be the 100-year anniversary before I'm actually going to
Yeah.
release it. It'll be done, but I'm actually going to release it on the May of 2021 because that'll be the 100-year anniversary of the actual bombing.
So May 2021.
Right, it
All right.
happened May 21st,
Yes.
1921. So,
So,
and like I said, I've been working on this for 2 years. And just like, you may have saw it in the trailer, I was able to incorporate some of the actual events that occurred today, like the Black Lives Matter, the riots that occurred in Philadelphia. I wanted to kind of incorporate that in along with the interviews. If you really look at it, nothing has really changed as far as the
Yeah.
racial undertone. It was the racist attitudes that existed during that period, and it's the racist attitude that we're fighting against today. So in
right.
100 years, nothing has really changed.
Fast forward May, I believe Mother's Day, 1985. And Nasir, I just heard my Nasir, and I don't think the listening audience heard him. So I'm going to bring this out since he mentioned it. Was the Philadelphia bombing the Move
Right.
organization
Who
on
say that?
Osage Avenue. And Nasir, did I hear you correctly? Maybe my
A lot of residents in Tulsa, Oklahoma didn't know about the bombings that happened in 1921. I said that similar to myself. I didn't know about the move bombings until like 3-4 years ago.
wow.
It was never mentioned in my history classes. And mind you, in high school, 12th grade year, I actually took Philadelphia history. There was a whole class called Philadelphia history. It was never mentioned.
And you grew up in Philadelphia. I know
Okay.
our audience is nationwide and maybe worldwide. You grew up in Philadelphia and went through the school systems, regardless whether they were private or public, and you
Right.
were never taught about the move bombing. Wow.
And
Incredible.
what's funny, Rob? You mentioned that was May of 1985. Actually, I moved to Florida when I was in 8th grade. So I actually went to junior high and high school in Orlando, Florida. I actually graduated from Orlando Jones High School. Big shout out to the Tigers. Um, which is a very prominent black school in Orlando, Florida. It's one of the second oldest black high schools in the state of Florida. Leon High School, which is in Tallahassee, is the oldest. So I had just graduated in 1985. I had already knew what school I was going to. I knew I was going to Penn State. So when I graduated in May, the end of May of 1985, and I came back to Philly so I can prepare myself to go to Penn State. And I heard about the bomb, and I actually went to Penn State with some of the people that actually lost their homes. I was blown away by the incident. So, it was a big surprise to me as well.
Wow. And Walt, I know you've done so much work. You were born and raised in Philadelphia. You've done so much work in the community in Philadelphia. What do you see? It just as far as being a social worker and some of the social ills. What do you see some of the ill effects that we've seen? From racism in Philadelphia, and particularly after the move bombings in West Philadelphia.
It's just disproportionate all over. Services is bad. We can talk about gentrification. We can talk about the red line districting. We can just talk about like social programming, like a lot of the things that you would think that can be afforded to a lot of the people with low income and, you know, in despair situations is not being afforded to them. And as Austin had brought up, is just like the system has set up barriers that has been systemically set throughout the years, and it's hard to break. So what we have to do is to get into these political positions and get into the establishments to break it up, because there's nobody that's going to help us but us.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Again, this is All In Politics on the All In Network. You're watching this actually live on YouTube. Hit, or as Walt, I'll get it right, smash
That subscribe
that
button.
subscribe button. And you'll, that way you'll get notifications for all of our All In Network programming. We have sports with Elijah and Mike. They did an outstanding segment with the NBA's restart. We also have Rain and Bliss. We have Real Deal with Cody Deal, and we have some more exciting new programming that Elijah and Mike will announce that are coming to the network. So we're ever growing, and like I always like to say, we're giving that voice to the voiceless. So in wrapping up, Hershey and Nasir, I know you guys, have a production company. Why don't you talk a little about that? I know you alluded to it a little bit, but I want to just kind of give you guys an opportunity to really, tell us a little bit about some of the works that you guys continue to do.
All right. So us as a production company, we're at the point where we're really focusing on getting into more narrative content. Narratives basically mean scripted work, feature films. We're aiming for those bigger budgets now, and we've done several documentaries at this point. This project, the Disagreeing with the Amalgamated People, will be our first feature film documentary, and we're looking forward to make more feature film docs soon. And we're always hunting for scripts, always down to collaborate with other producers and filmmakers who have upcoming projects who they think that would be be good for people to see. So that's where we're at. We're just trying to get those feature films started for you guys, because we did a lot of short work, and now it's time for the feature films, and this is our first one coming out the house, and it just happens to be a documentary.
Yeah, and I'm taking on, like, me personally. I've watched him. I've been around him and I watched him do work. And for the past 2 years, we actually filmed the highlights for the ABFF, the American Black Film Festival, along with to our brother, our frat brother Delmar Washington. Who's very instrumental in his career, because actually
Absolutely.
before he actually released his first film, I actually called Delmar. I said, "Look, man, I have a gifted, talented son, and I can't have that conversation with him about film because I'm not in film. Would you mind mentoring him?" Which he did. He actually, the week before the film actually came out, he flew in from LA and scrubbed through the film with him before we released it. The week we released the film, he sat there with him for like
Yeah.
about 8 hours. He said, "Yo, what's his address?" He took an Uber and surprised him and knocked on the door. He came from LA to help him scrub through the film. Now, moving forward, he had the opportunity to work with another brother from Delta Theta chapter, which is Stan Lathan, which he actually did the Dave Chappelle show.
Mhm.
So he actually filmed for the Dave Chappelle show. He actually did a special on with Kevin Hart on the LOL network, which actually the project was submitted to the ABFF our second year when we was actually working, and the film won Best Comedy. He was the assistant director of it. So right now we want to expand. We actually not only did documentary, but we did which is called a web series called The Vigilante Chronicles. We did 2 episodes of that, which was different. I mean, it was a narrative script. However, but right now we're ready to do something on a broader scale now. Documentary is like something that, we didn't choose to do it. It kind of chose us, and we actually got kind of good at doing it, by default.
Right.
But we prefer to start getting into doing some narrative work right now. So, that's where we at with it.
Great.
That's good. Do you guys have any contact information that you want to release to the public so they can get in
Yeah, you
contact
could
with both of you guys?
if anybody wants to find more content from us, anything that we do have available, it will be on nkacreations.com. It's nkacreations.com. And also, there's a form on there if you ever want to reach out, contact form, and we're accessible. All social media is NKA for the business. If you want to follow me personally, my Instagram on all social media is Nazir the Creator. That's Nazir the Creator. And Hershey's is Hershey Austin on Instagram.
as well as Facebook.
That's great. That's great, man. Well, we definitely appreciate you two brothers' insight and bringing us a great historical lesson that very much needed to be learned and discussed, and justice definitely needs to be brought about. So with that being said, we want to thank you guys. Appreciate you. Would love to have you back for a second round
Yeah,
of
but
more
Release party.
have
information.
us back when the week when we about to drop the film.
Yes,
To kind
sir.
of really get some, have us
Oh,
back
man,
the week
listen.
we would love to have another conversation, because by then I'll be able to really go in with you a little bit more, give you a little sizzle about what you're about to witness. So
Yeah. Really quick before we end, I did want to mention this, that we are planning on dropping a crowdfunding campaign just to help out with the post production, because we want this film to be as polished as possible. I've done all the editing for our past 5 films, but I'm at the point where I need help, and I know that to take this to another level, filmmaking is the most collaborative art form out there. So I want to have the best editors on this project. So we're gonna so we're gonna drop a crowdfunding campaign probably within like, the next month or so. It's going to be officially ready for everybody to contribute as much as they can. And then also this is a good opportunity to show how powerful the Black Dollar is.
absolutely. So $5, $10, whatever it takes. You can throw us a bone. We'll definitely get it done. Even though, despite that, we're struggling right now due to the coronavirus. But we're not going to let this stop us from getting this film out there, because it's very important. Like I said, this is one of those stories that need to be told, and especially when I start getting DMs from little kids saying, "Look, thank you for sharing just based on the trailer." Sharing this information that wasn't given to me in school. That kind of motivates me every day to continue to do the work that I'm doing.
And we'll make sure that we'll add a link to the trailer, as well as a link to your contacts underneath the comment section of the YouTube, as we continue to share this recording throughout.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
We thank you.
Oh, definitely. So to Nazir, Hershey,
Yes,
we
sir.
wish you all the best and much
Yes, sir, brother
accolades.
Harm. I appreciate that.
Uh, and Nazir, wish you much success in your young endeavors, man. And we want to encourage as many young people as possible to keep that dream up there and never give up that hope. You are a shining beacon of what can be done if you put your mind to it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank
I
you.
appreciate it.
All right. So that wraps up another episode of the All In Real to Jump Off with me, Walt the Damager, and my main man over here.
At Rob Cooper Jr. Get on me at the gram if you have any show, guest, or topic ideas. Peace.